2 years ago, I chose art history as one of my elective courses. I saw the word art and the word history, two of my favorites, and thought it would be easy credit and maybe I'd at least enjoy it a little bit. I'm not lying when I say this. Nothing could have prepared me for how rich this class would be. To this day, I still reference information I learned when viewing art, whether it be visual, literary, musical, from a scholarly perspective, and sometimes even from a critical perspective. And fortunately, I still have my notes. Art has been around since the dawn of man, and depending on one's definition, technically anything can be art. When I say artist's genesis, I'm not talking about the beginning of art. I'm talking about when visual art became profitable, the beginning of our patronage, if you will. And I want to talk about 15th to 16th century art specifically, otherwise known as the High Renaissance. Guilds of sculptors and painters were extremely popular in this era, and among who these guilds provided for was the church. In fact, it was one of their biggest patrons. Architects with an eye for ornamental detail were needed to build their cathedrals, and painters, if they were willing to, were needed to paint inside said cathedral. I'm sure you're all familiar with Michelangelo's creation of Adam on the ceiling of the Sistine Chapel. And if you're not, yeah, you are. This fresco piece is only one of 9 central panels on the ceiling of the Sistine Chapel, and each panel makes up a visual representation of the first 9 chapters of Genesis. Religious or not, if you're an artist, you have studied the works of Michelangelo because he is objectively a pioneer of the visual arts. And I hate to say it, but even a Renaissance man like Michelangelo would have not made it to his level if it weren't for the church and their commission. In other words, if it weren't for the influence of the church in the 15th and 16th century, works like the one done on the ceiling of the Sistine Chapel, a true display of art's capability to strike humanity, a reference to be studied for centuries to come, would simply cease to exist. Works like this capture an essence that contemporary artists, including myself, hope to replicate. The imagery, the composition, the symbolism, the meaning. So what happens when religion has followed a society in which artists cleave unto what made our craft a profession? What happens when artists have commissioners beyond the church? What happens when artists themselves are religious? When an artist conveys religious imagery and symbolism in their work, specifically Christian imagery and symbolism, is it because they want to? Or is it because to be an artist means to impart these things on viewers, consciously or unconsciously? On this channel, we are of the firm belief that as long as one is living, they shall also preach the gospel of Avenged Sevenfold. Both your sake and mine. Deal. The name of the band, Avenged Sevenfold, is alluding to Genesis 4:24, which is as follows. If Cain shall be avenged sevenfold, truly Lamech 70 sevenfold. These fuckers have a load of biblical symbolism in their music. One of them is the song Chapter 4 in their second album, Waking Fallen. This song calls to the entirety of Chapter 4 of Genesis, aka the story of Cain and Abel. Now, Cain and Abel are the sons of Adam and Eve. Cain was the tiller of the ground. Abel was the shepherd. Each boy gave their offerings to the Lord, and Abel was praised for his, but Cain wasn't. Being acknowledged by God was a huge deal, and to Cain, a lack of it warranted a complete outburst of anger. In this fit of rage that Cain had, he took his brother Abel out into the field, and while they were there, he murdered Abel, marking him the first murderer of humankind. These are the words spoken by God in Genesis 4:9 and 4:10. Where is Abel thy brother? And he said, What hast thou done? The voice of thy brother's blood crieth unto me from the ground. And these are lyrics from Avenged Song, Chapter 4.
Where is God? What have you done? From the soilless blood cries out to me!
In the 4th verse, these lyrics are screamed by M Shadows, while the rest of the song remains sung. This is the band's way of depicting God as this imposing figure. I also think it's worth mentioning here that Chapter 4 seems to be from the perspective of Cain. Through M Shadow's choice to use desperate yet deeply troubled vocals, one can almost feel and hear Cain's moral turmoil. After Cain kills his brother, God punishes him by casting him out of Eden and sending him to Earth so he can wander, as the Bible puts it. Along with this, God will not allow Cain to be the subject of vengeance. He even places a mark on Cain, preventing this alternative to his condemnation. So, in a way, part of God's punishment to Cain was mortality, humanity, life. And Cain said unto the Lord, my punishment is greater than I can bear. Cain and Abel aren't the only biblical figures that Avenged Sevenfold writes around. In their 2005 album, City of Evil, my favorite album, therein lies the song Beast and the Harlot, which references Revelation 17. The Harlot of Babylon, the Woman in the Scarlet Beast, whatever you know the chapter by. Dear God is literally a song of prayer. God hates us is mankind's cry out to God. The Wicked End, Requiem, Angels, I could go on and on. When you listen to Avenged Sevenfold, you are subjecting yourself to art made from the tellings of the Bible. Even the band members go by things like Reverend, rest in peace, fucking legend, and Johnny Christ. The album cover of their debut album, Sounding the Seventh Trumpet, is depicting angels on what one can only guess is Judgment Day based on the title of the album. These guys have a serious infatuation with the Bible. I mean, Jesus fucking Christ. In the 4th episode of Avenged Sevenfold's podcast, Tracks, the band is discussing their song Roman Sky, and then they are asked if they're religious. Brooks Wackerman, the current drummer, said this: no, I'm not. I love learning about religion. I went to Catholic school when I was younger. I'm definitely into science. I have a very open mind, but I don't subject myself to man-made religion. As for Zachy Vengeance, the rhythm guitarist, I do believe that there's some sort of harmony throughout the universe, but I usually just leave it at that. And Johnny Christ, the bassist, said, no, I am not religious. I'm pretty agnostic. At the end of the day, it doesn't fucking matter. You're here anyway. What are you gonna do? So, the band isn't religious, yet their music is ample with Christian imagery. Why is this? In that same Tracks episode, M. Shadow says this about Roman Sky: I wouldn't call it an atheist song or an anti-religion song. It is simply pointing out people in the past that were treated unfairly in the name of religion, maybe? The Stage, the 2016 album that Roman Sky comes from, tells the story of the human experience. Avenged Sevenfold wants to highlight what it means to be human. And you know what else pretty much tells the story of mankind? My verdict is this: non-religious people are drawn to the Bible and its stories because it conceptualizes and articulates our complex feelings toward being human. For thou wilt light my candle, the Lord my God will enlighten my darkness. And there went out fire from the Lord and devoured them, and they died before the Lord. Can y'all believe that shit's from the same book? Cain is mankind's wrath, which then led to Avenged writing a song about him from his perspective. They took figures like St. James and wrote a song about humanity and holiness.
Sometimes our saints are sinners.
So, let's take my previous statement. To be an artist is to convey religion, and turn it into to be human is to convey religion. We've now established that religious imagery is visually pleasing, yet easy to allude to when pushing themes, which at the end of the day is what quality art does. In order to understand why these things show up so much, we must first understand why humans make art. I'm going to use my Lion's Den retelling, Blackened, to explain this. I took this classic Bible story and used it as a base to tell a cautionary tale of blindless trusting, narcissism, and faithfulness. In other words, faith is flawed. One should not follow it confidently. Be wary of these seemingly blissful sentiments because, and I'm about to quote the Bible, be sober, be vigilant, for your adversary the devil, as a roaring lion, walketh about, seeking whom he may devour. The main character in my novel, Daniel, is an atheist, but religion is constantly referenced because he was raised on it. His mother was unstable though, which made Daniel view religion with an overly critical eye. So rather than being a source of comfort for Daniel, offering a place where he can find his inherent human nature, it actually ends up being the catalyst to his insanity. By the end of the book, he's absolutely batshit, and I mean that. Even with an atheist character like Daniel, I was able to use religion to unravel him and lay out his entire mind before me. He has dreams referencing the visions of Daniel the prophet, such as in chapter 48, when I wrote Daniel having a nightmare about the prophet's first beast, the lion with eagle's wings. And my whole tagline is, there was never a God to save Daniel Cross, so he took it upon himself. The Daniel in the Bible was saved due to his unrelenting faith to God, but my Daniel is as Christ-forsaken as they come. He was betrayed by his best friend after he had put all of his faith into her. And of course, Eden's not God. She's human. But when you're telling a story from the perspective of there is no God, a human is really all Daniel had to give faith. And look where that got him. The Bible truly is a holy book though. There's so many stories in here, making it a natural muse. I dare you to tell me not. Every time you hear the Bible quoted in media, you go, he said the thing. And creatives know that. They know you eat that shit up. It gives their work an extra layer, but it is wholly dependent on the view of the artist. A Christian band will show you the all-loving, gratifying side of having a relationship with God, but a band like Avenged will show you the foul sides of God by screaming his voice. Art is about perspective, and God Almighty, there's a lot of that in this book. I've always said it's a metaphor for the human experience. Artists create because their spirit wills it. With that, I'll let you off on this note about the most worshipped artist of all time. In the beginning, God created heaven and earth.